Hi class, this is Professor Harmony Kim. This recording is for the second week of lecture BMN 502 History of Buddhism. Let's think about first, who is the Buddha? Toward the end of the 19th century, there were many opinions among Western scholars as to whether or not the Buddha existed. These controversies ended in 1905 when the King Ashoka's stone pillar with inscriptions were discovered in Lumbini. Lumbini was a place known as the birthplace of the Buddha. The inscriptions engraved on the pillar are the 5 lines made up of 93 characters. Among these characters are the following. Here was born Buddha, the sage of the Shakan. Buddhism's 2600-year history started with Shakyamuni Buddha. The person named Gautama Siddhartha. Gautama was the family name and Siddhartha is personal name. Buddha is a title meaning enlightenment or awakened. Gautama was the family name of a man who was born on the Nepalese side of the modern Indian-Nepali border, approximately in the 6th century BCE. At the age of 35, Gautama Siddhartha attained enlightenment by realizing the truth, the Dhamma. Gautama Siddhartha was regarded as the founder of Buddhism. Gautama Siddhartha has the infinite wisdom to comprehend the truth and the infinite compassion to preach it to the suffering world. Gautama died at the age of 80. He was a human, not divine, and is no longer personally accessible to us. What is early Buddhism? Early Buddhism is following the original teaching of the Buddha and his direct disciples. The Buddhist scholars classify Buddhism into several categories such as Abhidhamma, Madhyamikaya, Yogacara, Pure Land Buddhism, Esoteric Buddhism, etc. However, early Buddhism is the foundation of all Buddhism. The history of Buddhism has been well verified through proper documentation and research. After the Buddha's passing away, the rules of conduct were compiled as the collection of rules of conduct, so-called Vinaya Pitaka. Dhamma was compiled as the collection of discourses, so-called Sutta Pitaka. So let's look at the first sermon by the Buddha in the sutra called Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. There are 5 parts in Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. First chapter describes 5 ascetics that abandoned the Buddha in the past when Buddha broke his fast. Second part is middle way. Third part, Noble Eightfold Path. Fourth part, the Four Noble Truths. And the last part is the Buddha's full enlightenment. Today, we will focus on the Four Noble Truths. As most students know, the Four Noble Truths represent suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, the way leading to the cessation of suffering. The Four Noble Truths resemble the kind of theoretical frame a medical doctor could use to explain his therapy. So the starting point is a certain kind of disease, and look at the cause of the illness. And the medical doctor tries to cure the disease by removing the cause. And lastly, in order to achieve this, one use a particular therapy. So the Buddha's Four Noble Truths are analogous to this. Four Noble Truths. What is the truth? All philosophies, ideologies, and religions of the world stand for the truth. Buddhism also stands for the truth. In Buddhism, there are four truths which are emphasized, and these are called the Four Noble Truths. The Pali word for the Four Noble Truths are Katari Arya Sachani. The word Arya is translated as noble. Arya is attached only to the Four Noble Truths, which is one of the 6 subjects of the Buddhist theory. What are those 6 subjects of Buddhist theory? One is the 5 aggregates, the 12 sense bases, the 18 elements, the 22 faculties, the Four Noble Truths, and the 12 links of dependent origination. The rest of 5 subjects do not have noble. Only Four Noble Truths hold the word noble, Arya. Arya is attached to the Noble Eightfold Path also, and the content of the way leading to the cessation of suffering among the Four Noble Truths is the Noble Eightfold Path. Therefore, the Noble Eightfold Path is included in the Four Noble Truths. Because the 4 kinds of truth are the noblest and most sacred teaching, the descriptive word Arya is used, and they are thus called the Four Noble Truths. One of discourse in Majjhima Nikaya titled The Greater Discourse on the Simile of the Elephant's Footprint, Venerable Sariputta asserted that all teachings of the Buddha can be included in the Four Noble Truths. Sariputta say as follows: Friends, just as the footprint of any living being that walks can be placed within an elephant's footprint, and so the elephant footprint is declared the chief of them because of its great size, so too all wholesome states can be included in the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are all based on the reality of suffering. Therefore, the word suffering is included in all 4 kinds of truth and standardized as the noble truth of suffering. Suffering is included in all 4 kinds of truth and standardized as the noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, and the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. However, in Mahayana discourse, there are far more expressions without the word suffering, such as noble truth of the origin. So if we look at in this dash mark, this is the first portion is subtitle of Four Noble Truths in early Buddhism. And the second part is each title of Four Noble Truths in Mahayana discourse. And the third part represent even later generation, the Four Noble Truths. Each truth is called differently. So, in early Buddhism, the noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. But in Mahayana discourse, There are far more expressions without the word suffering. The word suffering disappear, and just the noble truth of origin, then the noble truth of the cessation, and the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation. Even in the latter generations, noble has been removed and expressed in an abridged fashion, such as the truth of suffering, truth of the origin, truth of the cessation, the truth of the way leading to the cessation. What is the significance of the Four Noble Truths? The Buddha explains why he is the enlightened one. What is to be comprehended? The noble truth of suffering is comprehended by me. What is to be developed? The noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering is developed by me. What is to be abandoned? The noble truth of the origin of suffering has been abandoned by me. Therefore, I am the Buddha. So the one who can comprehend the noble truth of the suffering, who can develop the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering, and one who abandons the noble truth of the origin of suffering can become the Buddha. So all the teachings of the Buddha can be included in the Four Noble Truths. Because the Buddha awakened to the Four Noble Truths, he is called the Tathagata, the Arahant, and the perfectly enlightened one. The destruction of the taints come about for one who knows and who sees. Let's look at each truth one by one. First, the noble truth of suffering. In Buddhism, except for nirvana, it is understood that all conditioned phenomena are suffering. The early Buddhist discourses describe the suffering of all conditioned phenomena in two ways. One way is there are 4 and 8 kinds of suffering in the world. The various discourses of Nikaya standardize the 4 and 8 kinds of suffering as like this. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering, union with what is displeasing is suffering, separation from what is pleasing is suffering, not to get what one wants is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. So you already have some experience. If you want to stay with some people who you like, but you cannot stay together, that is a separation from what is pleasing, is a suffering. Or sometimes you have to stay together with someone who might not be much of your type. So union with what is displeasing is also suffering. 4 and 8 kinds of suffering in this world we experience all the time. Another way to describe suffering is, in several places within the early Buddhist discourse, it is explained that all conditioned phenomena are suffering and have 3 characteristics. What are 3 characteristics? There are 3 kinds of suffering, such as suffering due to pain, suffering due to change, suffering due to formation. These are the 3 kinds of suffering. The suffering due to pain means sentient beings' lives are painful. Therefore, there is suffering. The suffering due to change means no matter how great happiness may be, it will inevitably change. Therefore, there is suffering. The suffering due to formation means one clinging to I and mine that are simply composed of the five aggregate. Therefore, there is suffering. So the first truth of Four Noble Truths, the noble truth of suffering, means the five aggregate subject to clinging are suffering. There are 4 and 8 kinds of suffering in the world. All conditioned phenomena have 3 characteristics of suffering. Does suffering arise spontaneously? If it does not arise spontaneously, does that mean an almighty God is torturing beings? If suffering is emphasized and no explanation for the cause of suffering is given, it cannot be called the truth. Therefore, the second truth of the Four Noble Truths explains why suffering arises and what the cause of suffering is. This is called the noble truth of the origin of suffering. The Buddha expounded about the cause for the origin of suffering in many places in the early Buddhist discourses. The cause of suffering is craving, tanya in Pali. Tanya's literal meaning is thirst. Thirst means when you feel thirsty, you want to drink water. The discourses define craving as follows. Now this, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. It is this craving which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there, that is, craving for sensual pleasure, craving for existence, craving for extermination. The Buddha expounded that craving is the fundamental cause leading to rebirth or renewed existence. These deserve special attention. Because of craving, sentient beings repeat the cycle of birth and death. Of course, craving is not the sole cause of suffering. The unwholesome dharma such as ignorance, anger, envy, stinginess, etc. are also causes for suffering and the endless cycle of birth and death. Nevertheless, the Buddha said craving is the most important cause. The Buddha talked about the 3 kinds of craving, such as kama tanya, bhava tanya, and vibhava tanya. Kama tanya is craving for sensual pleasures. The commentaries explain that kama tanya is a synonym for the lust of the 5 cores of sensual pleasure. The lust for the objects perceived through the 5 sense organs, such as eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, is called kama tanya. This craving occurs each and every moment to us because we live in the sensual desire sphere. Bhava tanya is craving for the form and formless sphere. Bhava tanya is a synonym for lust for existence in the form and formless sphere and craving for jhana. The form and formless spheres are the spheres one is born into through the practice of jhana. Jhana is advanced mental state achieved by meditation practice. Therefore, arousing in intense craving for jhana practice and absorption concentration so that one can be born into the form and formless spheres is called bhava tanya. So there are 3 realms, 3 spheres in the world. One is sensual desire sphere. The other one is forms sphere. The other one is formless sphere. And Bhavatanya is more regarding to form and formless spheres. The last Tanya, Vihavatanya, is craving for non-existence, and Vihavatanya is a synonym of craving for annihilationism. Vihavatanya means feeling disgust with existence, possibly causing the impulse to commit suicide, for instance. I think perhaps greater Bhavatanya exists among contemporary human beings because of their intense feelings of disgust and despair about their complicated lives and relationships. However, Vihavatanya is a definite kind of craving. As long as a craving exists, regardless of the type, sentient beings will be reborn. If one definitely does not want to be reborn, one must realize Nirvana. Nirvana is a state of remainderless extinguishment of craving. If craving is the cause of suffering, one arrives at conclusion that suffering will cease by the removal of craving. Thus, the cessation of suffering is the third truth, which means Nibbana. The early Buddhist discourses and the commentaries explain the third truth as follows. This is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of the same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, free from it, non-reliance on it. Here, the remainderless fading away and cessation is synonym with Nibbana. When Nibbana is realized, craving becomes remainderless through fading away and cessation. In the early Buddhist discourses, the third truth, cessation, is synonym with Nirvana and means suppression, destruction, etc. Nirvana means a state of extinguished fire. What is extinguished, and by what? Venerable Sariputta clearly explained as follows. Friend Sariputta, it is said, Nirvana, Nirvana, what now is Nirvana? The destruction of lust, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion. This is called Nirvana. Early Buddhism's ultimate message is Nirvana. In short, Nirvana is realized by abandoning. Nirvana appears when all that we believe life to mean is destroyed. So the third truth, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, is Nirvana. By eliminating craving, which is the cause of suffering, one can arrive at the state of Nirvana, and Nirvana is the state all suffering is extinguished. The last of the Four Noble Truths is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is well known as the noble truth of the path. As previously stated, the third truth, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, is Nirvana. The Buddha emphasized that Nirvana is the ultimate happiness. So, how is Nirvana realized? Nirvana is realized by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. The following is the stated in the discourses. And what, friend, is that path? What is that way for the realization of the Nirvana? It is this Noble Eightfold Path. That is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Let's examine several aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path. First, the Buddha talks about the Noble Eightfold Path in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which is his first discourse after his enlightenment. The Buddha states the following. And what is that middle path awakened to by the Tathagata, which give rise to vision, which give rise to knowledge, which leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nirvana? It is this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Second, the Buddha discusses the Noble Eightfold Path in his last discourse named Mahaparinirvana Sutra. In whatever Dhamma and discipline the Noble Eightfold Path is not found, no samana is found of the first, the second, the third, or the fourth grade. Here, samana refers to recluse, monk, or ascetic. But such samanas can be found of the first, second, third, and fourth grade in Dhamma and discipline where the Noble Eightfold Path is found. Now, Subhada, in this Dhamma and discipline, the Noble Eightfold Path is found, and in it are to be found samanas of the first, second, third, and fourth grade. Those other schools are devoid of true samanas. In other words, as long as Dhamma and disciplines are based on the Noble Eightfold Path, samanas, such as monks or ascetics, can reach out the nirvana. The important fact is that, as explained in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Noble Eightfold Path is the middle path. In the early Buddhist discourses, the middle path always appears as the Noble Eightfold Path. Therefore, the middle path should not be viewed only as the interpretation and philosophy. Since the middle path means the Noble Eightfold Path in the early Buddhist discourse, the root of Buddhism, such as the middle path, is the practice. One must first accept the Buddha's sincere explanation of the Noble Eightfold Path as the practice system. So, the fourth truth of the Four Noble Truths, which is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering, is the Noble Eightfold Path. Nirvana can be realized through practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. Let's solve the questions. The first one, what can cause the suffering on the grounds of the Four Noble Truths? There are several factors to cause suffering, but the foremost cause of suffering is what? You can find the answer in the previous slide. The second question, What is it called? The cessation of suffering. When the cause of suffering is eliminated, then practitioner eventually what? So you can find this answer also from the lecture video. The last question, how is nirvana realized? How the practitioner can reach nirvana? By practicing what? So you also find this answer from this lecture. This is the example of a submitting assignment. You need to send the quiz answers to my email address. When you send me email, please include your email address in CC. Subject title is BMN 502 Week 2 assignment. In the main text body, you need to write down your official name, last name, comma followed by first name. And you will write down correct answer to each quiz question, and the due of this assignment will be October 18th, Friday, midnight. This is the end of lecture. Thank you.